The great room of the mountain lodge sits wrapped in winter silence. Outside, frost clings to every window like a second skin, and stars pierce the black sky so sharp they look like they could cut. Inside, candlelight trembles across mahogany walls and a stone fireplace that rises 3 stories high. The temperature has dropped below freezing, but the cold inside this room comes from something else entirely. Vivien Pierce stands with her back against the mahogany desk, her hands shaking so badly she can barely hold them still. She is 29 years old but carries the exhausted face of someone who has lived twice that long. Her dark hair, usually pinned back in the careful style of a nanny, falls loose around her shoulders tonight. The designer nanny uniform she wears, pale blue, immaculate, worth more than she earned in 2 months, hangs on her frame like borrowed skin. Her eyes are the green of shallow water, and right now they are drowning. Dante Caruso stands 3 feet away from her, and the space between them feels like a canyon. He is 47 years old, 6'2", with shoulders that fill a doorway the way a king fills a throne. His black hair is silvered at the temples, and his face is carved from granite and scar tissue. A thin white line runs from his right eye to his cheekbone, a gift from someone who made the mistake of thinking violence was currency he could spend. His hands, which have signed the deaths of men without hesitation, are open at his sides now, trembling. The letter sits crumpled on the floor between them. It is 2:48 in the morning. Dante found it on the mahogany table in the foyer when he came downstairs searching for Vivien, who had not come to tuck Oliver into bed. The envelope was sealed. Her name was written on the front in handwriting so shaky it looked like it belonged to an old woman. He opened it there in the candlelight, standing alone, and every word sliced through him like a blade through silk. "I'm leaving before I destroy you. Before I destroy this family. Before the things attached to my name reach Oliver and poison him. You deserve someone clean. You deserve someone without a past that bleeds. I love you too much to stay." That was when he found her in the great room, standing in the dark, her hands pressed against the cold glass of the window as if she could push through it into the frozen night beyond. Now Dante's voice comes out broken, shattered like the silence never should be broken in his presence. "Why would you write these words? Why would you think for 1 second that I would let you?" "Because I have to," Vivien whispers. Her voice is trembling like a candle in the wind, barely audible. "Because Preston came to me. Because Margaret showed me the photographs. Because everywhere I go, I destroy things, and I will not destroy your son." Dante moves toward her, and his movement is so sudden that Vivien flinches. But he only reaches for her wrists, not in anger but in something rawer than anger, desperation. "Look at me. Vivien, look at me." She cannot. Her eyes stay fixed on the floor where the letter lies like evidence of a crime. His grip tightens, not cruel but firm, holding her there when every bone in her body is screaming to run. "You think running will protect him? You think disappearing into the night will save anything? You are his nanny. You are the only person in this world he trusts completely." The footsteps on the marble staircase come before either of them can speak again. Light, quick, small footsteps that freeze everything in place. Oliver Caruso stands on the landing in dinosaur pajamas, his brown hair wild from sleep, his 8-year-old body small and uncertain against the vastness of the staircase. He is his father's son, the same sharp eyes, the same set to his chin, but his face right now is a child's face, confused and frightened by what he is seeing. "Daddy!" His voice is small. It fills the entire room. Why is Daddy hurting Mommy? The word Mommy stops time itself. Dante releases Vivien's wrists instantly, his hands dropping to his sides like they have been severed from his body. He spins to face his son, and the transformation is so complete it is as if a different man stands in his place. The dangerous man vanishes. The Mafia boss dissolves. What remains is a father confronting the worst possible version of himself reflected in his child's eyes. "I'm not hurting her, son. I'm trying to keep her from leaving us." Oliver's small hand grips the mahogany banister. His eyes move from his father to Vivien and back again. He does not understand what he is seeing, and the confusion on his face is more painful than any weapon could ever be. Vivien moves toward the child instinctively, her nanny training overriding every instinct screaming at her to run. She climbs the 3 steps that separate them, her hand extending toward his small face with a tenderness that breaks something open inside Dante's chest. "Oliver, sweetheart, it's okay. Your daddy would never hurt anyone he loves." The word loves pangs in the freezing air between them, suspended in candlelight, impossible to take back. Dante stares at her. His eyes, dark as winter storms, burning with something ancient and protective, lock onto hers, and she sees it happen. The moment he stops fighting it. The moment he stops pretending. The moment grief and hope collide inside him so violently that tears actually spill down his scarred face. No one has seen Dante Caruso cry since the day he buried his first son 7 years ago. Oliver watches his father's shoulders shake once, just once, and the boy's expression shifts from fear to something deeper. Understanding, maybe. Or the beginning of it. "Daddy," Oliver says again, and this time his voice is steadier. "Don't be sad." The child says this the way children say the simplest truths, as if sadness is something that can be commanded away by small voices and pure hearts. Vivien stands motionless on the staircase, her hand still reaching toward Oliver, her own tears streaming down her face now, her entire body trembling. And in that moment, something shifts in Dante Caruso that can never shift back. The man who has ruled Miami's underworld through fear and absolute control realizes that the most dangerous force in his entire empire is standing 3 feet away from him, and he is about to lose her to his own darkness. Before we continue, drop a like if this story hits you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming tomorrow. Every subscriber, every share, every comment you leave helps us bring more stories like this into the world. Now let us rewind to the beginning, 3 months earlier, to a school parking lot where a woman no one noticed was about to save everything. The November rain comes down in sheets, cold and relentless, drumming against the metal roof of the elementary school like 1,000 tiny hammers. A silver Mercedes SUV pulls up to the pickup line, and within seconds, men in black suits emerge from the 2 vehicles flanking it. They move with the synchronized precision of military personnel, creating a perimeter around the vehicle, their eyes scanning the parking lot for threats that only they can perceive. And that is where our story truly begins. The November rain comes down in sheets, cold and relentless, drumming against the metal roof of the elementary school like 1,000 tiny hammers. A silver Mercedes SUV pulls up to the pickup line, and within seconds, men in black suits emerge from the 2 vehicles flanking it. They move with the synchronized precision of military personnel, creating a perimeter around the vehicle, their eyes scanning the parking lot for threats that only they can perceive. Inside the Mercedes, Vivien Pierce sits perfectly still in the driver's seat, her hands gripping the wheel at 10 and 2, her grey nanny uniform pressed so carefully that not a single wrinkle mars the fabric. She is 29 years old but looks decades older, her eyes carry the weight of someone who has learned to make herself smaller and smaller until she nearly disappears. The watch on her wrist is broken, stopped at 7:43, a casualty of her last employer's son throwing it against a wall. She does not bother to fix it anymore. In her pocket, folded into a precise square, is a piece of paper with numbers on it. Not the good kind of numbers. The kind that make your chest tight and your breath shallow. $17. That is all Vivien Pierce has left in the entire world. $17 to last until Friday when the Westbrook family pays her. $17 to buy gas, to buy food, to exist in a city that costs money just to breathe in. She watches the children stream out of Harrington Academy like a river of privilege. Designer backpacks. Lunch boxes with cartoon characters that cost more than her entire monthly rent. Their parents sit in cars that cost more than houses, checking their phones, barely glancing at the children tumbling toward them. No one notices the grey uniform. No one notices Vivien. This is the way she has learned to exist, present but invisible, like a photograph that no one really looks at. The rain intensifies. Thunder rolls across the Miami sky, and Vivien's hands tighten slightly on the wheel. She is waiting for Marcus Westbrook, age 7, who is supposedly in the 3rd grade classroom. She checks the clock on the dashboard, 3:17 in the afternoon. Children are always late. Adults are always late. The world moves on its own time and expects people like Vivien to simply wait in grey uniforms and make themselves useful. Then she sees it. A small boy in a blue blazer, stumbling on the wet curb, his backpack sliding off his shoulder. He is maybe 8 years old, with dark hair and a confusion on his face that suggests he is looking for someone who is not coming. Behind him, a black Mercedes SUV is backing up fast, its driver's head turned toward her window, a phone pressed to her ear, her eyes everywhere except the rearview mirror where a child is about to become a tragedy. Vivien does not think. She has spent 8 years training herself to think before she acts, to be careful, to be invisible, to never draw attention. But something older than caution wakes in her chest. Something that remembers being a child without a hand to grab her back from the edge of darkness. She is out of the Mercedes before the decision fully forms in her mind. Her sensible nanny flats, black, from a discount outlet, worn at the heels, pound against the wet concrete as she sprints across the parking lot. Her hand reaches out and closes around the boy's arm, and she yanks backward with all the force her small body can muster. They both go down hard, their bodies hitting the concrete together, the sound swallowed by the rain and the screaming of brakes. The black Mercedes stops 3 feet away. The boy, Oliver Caruso, though she does not know it yet, is gasping beneath her, his uniform soaked with rain and her blood, because her palms have split open on the concrete to shield his body from the impact. His eyes are enormous, dark like storms, and for a moment he cannot breathe because the impact has forced all the air from his lungs. "You saved me," he whispers when he can finally speak. Vivien is shaking. Her hands are shaking. Her entire body is a tuning fork vibrating at a frequency only fear can produce. She pushes herself up slightly, checking him for injuries, her fingers moving with the efficiency of someone who has done this before, cleaned scraped knees, wiped tears, held children who were not hers and had to be perfect with them anyway. "What's your name, sweetheart?" she asks, and her voice is steady even though the rest of her is fragmenting. "Oliver. My daddy's supposed to pick me up but he's always late." The boy's knee is bleeding through his uniform pants, a steady seep of red against navy blue. His eyes keep finding her face like she is the only solid thing in a dissolving world. Vivien digs into her pocket, the same pocket where her $17 lives, and produces a packet of tissues, slightly crushed but clean. She cleans the scrape with the gentleness of someone who knows what it means to be hurt and left alone with it. The parking lot is chaos around them, other parents rushing over, asking if they're okay, their phones already out to call ambulances. But Vivien stays focused on Oliver, making silly voices, telling him the story of a brave knight who scraped his knee but was still the bravest knight who ever lived. 20 minutes pass like this. The rain continues. The crowd disperses. Other children are picked up by other adults. And then a black Escalade pulls up to the curb, and everything in the parking lot shifts like a door opening onto a different world. 2 men emerge first, Rocco and Pietro, though Vivien does not know their names yet. They move with the calculated precision of people who have learned to turn their bodies into weapons. Their eyes scan the parking lot, taking in exits, threats, angles of attack. They position themselves between the Escalade and everyone else, creating an invisible perimeter that pushes the remaining parents back several feet without a single word being spoken. Then Dante Caruso steps out of the vehicle. He is 6 feet 2 inches tall, and his presence takes up space the way gravity takes up space. It is simply there, simply undeniable. His suit is black, expensive in a way that whispers rather than shouts, tailored so perfectly that it moves like a second skin. His tie is silver. His cufflinks are gold, catching the grey light of the storm. He is perhaps 45 years old, with dark hair silvered at the temples, and a face that looks like it was carved from something harder than flesh, marble, maybe, or the stone of a monument. There is a scar running from the corner of his left eye down to his cheekbone, thin and white, like a blade wrapped in silk. When his dark eyes find Oliver sitting on the curb with Vivien, something in his face shifts. It is subtle, just a tightening around the eyes, just a slight change in how he holds his shoulders, but it is enough to make Rocco and Pietro exchange a look that they immediately suppress. "What happened?" Dante says. Not a question. Never a question. A command that expects to be answered immediately. Oliver jumps up, his injured knee forgotten. "Dad! This lady saved me. A car almost hit me and she grabbed me and we fell and it hurt, but she's nice and she told me a story about a night." Dante's eyes move from his son to Vivien, and she feels the weight of his gaze like a physical thing pressing against her chest. She stands carefully, smoothing her grey uniform, keeping her eyes down the way she has been trained by 8 years of invisible service. The rain soaks through her uniform. Her palms throb where the concrete tore them open. But her voice, when she speaks, is steady and small and practiced. "Your son is fine, sir. Just a scraped knee. The driver didn't see him. I should go." "I'm sure you have. I can call the Westbrooks to come get Marcus instead." She turns to leave, but Oliver's small hand shoots out and grabs her fingers. "Wait! I didn't say thank you. Thank you for saving me." The words are innocent, simple, the kind of words a child speaks without understanding their weight. But in them, in that small gesture, something fundamental shifts in the man standing 3 feet away. Dante Caruso watches his son hold the hand of a stranger with a comfort that his own father never gave him. Dante watches a woman who is trying to disappear stay absolutely still instead, honoring a child's gratitude the way some people honor prayer. "What's your name?" His voice is different now, still commanding, but something has moved beneath the surface, something deeper and more dangerous in its gentleness. "Vivien Pierce, sir. You live in with the Westbrooks?" "Yes, sir." In the East Wing, the small room next to the nursery. He processes this information, the way she says it, the way her shoulders curve inward, the way she has already accepted her own insignificance as fact. He sees the uniform worn thin at the seams. He sees her hands, which are small and capable and bleeding. He sees her eyes, which are grey-green and exhausted, eyes that have learned not to ask for anything. Oliver needs a new nanny. His last one quit yesterday. "Are you happy with the Westbrooks?" The question lands like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples outward that disturb the surface of everything she thought she knew. Vivien cannot breathe for a moment. She cannot think. She cannot do anything except stand there in her soaked grey uniform with her bleeding hands and try to understand how this is happening. That's very kind, sir, but I couldn't possibly. I pay 3 times the standard rate. Private room with its own bathroom. Weekends off if you want them. Dental insurance. A retirement account that doesn't require you to steal from your employers just to survive." He says this last part quietly, as if it is not an accusation but a simple statement of fact, as if he already knows the small theft she has made, the apples pocketed from kitchens, the leftover bread hidden in her closet, the careful calculations of how much she can take before anyone notices. He pulls a card from his jacket pocket. It is expensive card stock, cream-colored, with embossed lettering. Just a name and a phone number. Nothing else. No title. Nothing needed. "Think about it," Dante says, and he presses the card into her hand. His fingers touch hers for just a moment, and the contact is electric in a way that terrifies her. She pulls her hand back, the card clutched in her fingers, and nods. The Escalade pulls away from the curb. Oliver waves through the window, his small face pressed against the glass, and Vivien finds herself waving back even though she knows she should not, even though waving at the Caruso family will only make this harder, only make the invisible life she has built more visible, only make her want things she cannot have. She stands alone in the rain, the card still in her trembling hand, her mind already spinning forward into consequences she cannot yet see. A limousine pulls away to the left side of the parking lot, and in the shadows between the vehicles, a man in a cashmere coat watches with an expression of pure, crystalline hatred. Preston Mercer, 37, has been waiting for his uncle to arrive. Preston, who has spent the last 6 months carefully positioning himself as Dante's successor, carefully making himself indispensable, carefully building the narrative that he alone understands the future of the empire. And Preston just watched his uncle break 15 years of distance to stand in a rainstorm and offer everything to a woman in a grey uniform. The card in Vivien's pocket suddenly feels less like an opportunity and more like the first domino in a series that will topple everything she has carefully built in her invisibility. At 3 o'clock in the morning, Vivien Pierce sits at the Mountain Lodge's walnut desk with a pen trembling in her hand. Snow falls outside like ash from a dying world, the blizzard turning the windows opaque, turning the night into something suffocating and absolute. The letter in front of her is half-written, the words scratched out and rewritten because there is no language beautiful enough to explain a goodbye that will break a child's heart. "I'm leaving before I destroy you," the letter reads. "Before my presence in your world brings consequences you don't deserve." She knows this is cowardice dressed as nobility. She knows she is running. But Dante Caruso exists in a stratosphere she can never reach, and being invisible in his home is worse than being invisible anywhere else because for 6 weeks she has felt seen, and now that feeling will consume her if she stays. The pen scratches across the paper. Her hand aches from writing. Outside, the wind tears at the lodge's corners, a sound like something wounded, and she thinks about how Dante looked at her by the fire, how his hand almost touched her face in the kitchen, how he said her name like it mattered. It cannot matter. She folds the letter, seals it, and sets it on the desk beside a candle that flickers in the drafts moving through the old house. Tomorrow morning, she will slip out while they sleep. She will walk down the mountain road even though the snow is 3 feet deep. She will disappear the way she has learned to disappear, becoming nothing again, becoming the ghost she was before Dante Caruso looked up from his espresso one morning and finally saw her. But footsteps sound in the hallway. Heavy, deliberate, the footsteps of a man who does not sleep. Vivien's breath catches. She reaches for the letter, for the candle, but it is too late. The door to the study opens, and Dante stands in the doorway wearing a black cashmere sweater and pajama pants, his dark hair disheveled, exhaustion and something else, something dangerous, carved into the lines of his face. He sees the letter before he sees her. His eyes move from the sealed envelope to her face, and she watches the moment he understands. The color drains from his face, replaced by something raw and terrifying. "Vivien." His voice is not loud. It is worse than loud. It is the voice of a man whose control is shattering like ice beneath weight. "Tell me you are not doing what I think you are doing." She stands, her chair scraping against the hardwood, the sound sharp as a gunshot in the silence. "You should go back to bed. Oliver might wake up." "Oliver?" He repeats the name like it is a weapon turned against him. "So this is about Oliver. You're running from my son." "I'm running from myself." The words break out of her, desperate and true. "From what I feel when I'm near you. From wanting things I have no right to want." Dante crosses the room in 3 strides, and she takes a step back, her hip colliding with the desk. He stops a breath away from her, and she can see the fury in him, the disbelief, the something else that looks like pain. "You think I don't know what you feel?" His voice is steady now, controlled, which somehow makes it worse. "You think you're the only one fighting this? You're my employer." "No. I stopped being that 2 weeks ago when you made my son laugh for the first time in his life. I stopped being that the night you sat in this kitchen and told me you had no one, and I realized I had been waiting for you without knowing I was waiting." He reaches out, and this time he does not stop. His fingers trace her jawline, rough and gentle at once. "I have spent 15 years building walls around myself. I have made myself into something harder than steel, something that does not break. But you came into my house, and you broke me open like you were the only key that ever fit." Vivien's eyes burn, but she does not let the tears fall. "People like me don't stay in worlds like yours. We disappear. It's what we do." "Not anymore." Dante's hand moves to her chin, tilting her face up to his. "I don't care if you clean houses or run empires. I don't care where you came from. You are not disappearing from my life, Vivien. You are staying, and you are going to tell me why you really want to leave." The truth comes out in pieces. She tells him about the foster care system, about the man who hurt her when she was 19, about 8 years of running from city to city because staying anywhere meant risking being found. She tells him about the $17 in her pocket, about learning to be invisible because visible women got destroyed. Dante listens without interrupting. When she finishes, his hand is still on her face, and his eyes are wet. "Tomorrow," he says quietly, "we are going home to Miami. And the day after that, I am calling a lawyer. You are going to tell that lawyer everything, every person who hurt you, every debt that was used to keep you trapped, every reason you learned to disappear. And then we are going to burn it all down. We are going to erase every consequence, every threat, every piece of evidence that you were ever invisible." "You can't." "I can. I will. And you're going to let me because you don't get to decide anymore that you don't matter. Oliver decided you matter. I decided you matter. The only vote that's missing is yours." Outside, the blizzard intensifies. Snow piles against the windows like the world is trying to bury them. But inside the study, by candlelight, Dante Caruso pulls Vivien Pierce against his chest, and for the first time in 8 years, she lets someone hold her without calculating how long before they leave. She does not know that Pietro has already begun investigating Preston Mercer's movements. She does not know that Margaret Harrington's lawyer has been sending emails to Dante's security team for weeks, documenting every lie Margaret has told about Vivien in Miami's elite circles. She does not know that Rocco is preparing documents, that her past is about to be systematically dismantled by men in suits who answer to a man who just realized he would burn the world to keep her safe. She only knows that she is being held, that her letter sits unread on the desk, that for the first time, someone is choosing to see her instead of looking through her. At dawn, when Oliver wakes and finds her making breakfast in the lodge's kitchen, he hugs her so hard her ribs ache. He does not ask why she looks like she has been crying. Children never do. They only know what they need, and what Oliver needs is her presence, her voice reading stories, her hands braiding his hair. Dante watches from the doorway, his phone already against his ear, already giving orders. Already burning down the world that tried to make Vivien invisible. The drive back to Miami takes 4 hours. Vivien sits in the backseat next to Oliver, watching the landscape transform from frozen forest to highway to ocean. Her phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. "Your file is being compiled. Stay strong." R. She does not know who R is. She will soon. Rocco, with his flat assessment and his unexpected softness, is about to become the architect of her salvation. Dante sits in the front passenger seat, his jaw tight, his fingers drumming against his thigh in a rhythm that matches his heartbeat, a rhythm of anticipation, of justice about to be served, of a man who finally found something worth the cost of his own humanity and will not let it slip away. The lodge disappears behind them. The letter sits on the desk, unread, a ghost of a goodbye that will never be sent. The snow stops falling at midnight, the silence so complete it sounds like the world has been sealed inside glass. Oliver is asleep upstairs, his nightmare finally broken by exhaustion, his small body curled under blankets that cost more than Vivien earned in 6 months. Dante sits in the library, every lamp burning, papers spread across the mahogany desk like evidence of war. The debt list Preston photographed sits at the center, each entry in Vivien's careful handwriting: groceries she couldn't afford, hospital bills she never paid, the $85,000 Dante slipped into her account 3 weeks ago when he learned about Marcus, the man who broke her ribs twice and made her believe she deserved it. Rocco enters without knocking, snow still melting on his shoulders. Rocco is 42, built like a man constructed from concrete and certainty, his left eye scarred from a knife fight in his 20s that he never explains. He wears a grey suit and moves like someone calculating distance and angles. Preston's been moved to the Salvatore compound. Vincent's people are still questioning him about the port skimming. By morning, it'll be city news, the family's business, nothing to trace back to you. Rocco's voice is gravel and competence. But we have a problem moving forward. Margaret. Dante doesn't look up from the papers. She's been calling reporters for 3 days. Some girl from the Miami Herald bit. Full story dropping tomorrow. Mafia boss's secret love child scandal is the working headline, but that's just the hook. She's built a narrative that Vivien targeted you deliberately, that she's a con artist with a history of seducing wealthy men. Rocco crosses to the fireplace, standing in the warmth. Margaret's showing them photographs of Vivien from the bar where she worked, implying prostitution, doctored images making it look like she was. I want to know how much Margaret knows. Everything. Every conversation, every source, every piece of so-called evidence. Pietro's handling it. But sir, Margaret's not working alone. She's feeding information to someone inside your operation. The words land like a gunshot in the quiet. Dante finally looks up, and Rocco sees it, the moment the man shifts from grieving lover back to the thing that built an empire. His dark eyes go flat and purposeful, the kind of flat that precedes systematic destruction. Find them. There's something else. Rocco pulls out his phone, shows a video. It's from the lodge's security camera, timestamp 11:33 p.m. 2 nights ago. Vivien on the terrace, Oliver tumbling toward the edge, her body launching forward before conscious thought could catch up, grabbing his jacket, both of them sliding across ice, her back slamming into the railing with force that makes Rocco wince just watching it. She was hurt. Badly. Her old injuries, the scarring on her back, that impact reopened some of them. She's been hiding it. Won't let you see the damage. Dante stands abruptly, and the chair clatters backward. Where is she? Kitchen. Making coffee at 1 in the morning like it's her only job on earth. The kitchen is all white marble and stainless steel, a room designed to make normal people feel small. Vivien stands at the espresso machine wearing one of Dante's shirts, the fabric hanging off her frame, her red hair tied back so severely her face looks carved from glass and pain. She's making coffee with the careful precision of someone who learned long ago that broken things don't get a second chance if they're not useful. When Dante enters, she doesn't turn. I thought you were asleep. Why didn't you tell me about your back? Because it's not your problem. He closes the distance in 3 steps and gently lifts the shirt. What he sees stops his breathing. The old scars, the map of hell she described in her letter, have fresh wounds across them, the skin torn and bruised, some areas already showing infection's dark red warning. His hands hover over the damage without touching, and when he speaks, his voice sounds like gravel being crushed under a tire. We're going to the hospital. I don't need. You're infected, Vivien. Look at this. Look at it. He turns her toward the window's reflection, forces her to see herself. This is sepsis waiting to happen. This is you risking everything, Oliver, me, yourself, because you convinced yourself you're not worth basic care. She starts to cry silently, tears running without sound, without movement. Just wet streaks down her face like the body grieving separately from the mind. Margaret's planning to destroy you, Dante continues, his voice steady despite the fury building in his chest. Preston wanted you gone. And you're standing here making coffee like your worth is measured in how useful you can be. Do you understand how that sounds to me? Do you understand what you're telling your son when you teach him that people he loves hurt themselves and hide it? Oliver's asleep. He doesn't need to know. He already knows you're hurt. Children always know. They just don't have words for what they're sensing. Dante reaches for her hand, pulls her toward the door. We're going to the hospital. We're treating the infection. We're going to start behaving like people who believe they deserve to survive. And then, while you recover, we're going to dismantle every single person who tried to make you invisible. The drive to Miami Baptist Medical Center takes 40 minutes in the frozen night. Vivien sits in the back seat of the car, hands folded, staring at nothing while Dante sits beside her making phone calls. His voice never raises. His tone never changes. But every person on the other end of those calls, insurance administrators, hospital supervisors, department heads, understands that the man speaking is someone who has killed people for lesser offenses than inconveniencing him tonight. By the time they arrive, a private room is prepared. A plastic surgeon trained in scar revision is being called in at 2 in the morning. Blood work is being expedited. The infection is confirmed, early stage, treatable, dangerous if left unchecked. Vivien lies on the hospital bed in a gown, and a doctor she's never met examines her back with professional detachment while explaining treatment protocols in language designed to minimize her fear. The wounds are clean enough to begin antibiotic therapy immediately. For administration, then oral follow-up. The scarring beneath will require several treatments, laser work, possibly steroid injections, but the priority is preventing sepsis progression. You'll be here 48 hours minimum, possibly longer depending on response. When the doctor leaves, Dante sits on the edge of the bed and takes her hand. His wedding ring, gold, ancient, worn from his father's hand to his own, presses cool against her palm. Margaret's building a case against you in the court of public opinion. She's manufactured evidence, paid people to lie about your past, created a narrative where you're a predator instead of a survivor. His dark eyes hold hers. But here's what she didn't account for: I'm faster than she is, meaner than she is, and I have resources she can't imagine. You can't fight rumors with money, Dante. You can only. No. But you can fight them with truth. Recorded statements from the abuse counselor at the shelter where you stayed after Marcus broke your ribs. Medical records from that same hospital visit. The police report you filed but never had the courage to press charges on. I'm going to press them for you, with your consent. Bank records showing your financial history, every place you worked, every person who can testify that you're the most hardworking, careful, honest human being they've ever encountered. Vivien's tears start again, but different now. Breaking open instead of sealed shut. And Preston, Dante's jaw tightens. Preston made a critical error. He went to the Salvatores this morning with information he thought would hurt me. He told Vincent that I was moving money through our port operations in ways that didn't align with their agreed-upon split. Except I wasn't. But Preston was. He's been skimming for 6 months, and he tried to frame it on our family to cover his own theft. What happens to him? Vincent will decide. But his days in this family are finished. His access is revoked. His name will be whispered in every criminal organization from here to New York as a thief and a liar. He'll spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder, wondering which day the people he betrayed will decide he's not worth keeping alive. The heart monitor beside the bed beeps its steady rhythm, proof that she's still alive, still present, still deserving of the extraordinary man sitting beside her. I need you to understand something, Dante says quietly. You're not invisible anymore, Vivien. You're not the person people look through. You're the woman I'm building a life with. You're the mother who saved my son from the ice and then saved him again by existing. You're the person who changed me. Outside the hospital window, the city sprawls in electric constellations. Somewhere out there, Margaret Harrington is probably still making phone calls, still believing her version of the story will prevail. Somewhere else, Preston is learning the consequences of betrayal. And here, in this sterile room with its beeping machines and clinical lights, Dante leans down and kisses Vivien's forehead like she's something sacred. Sleep, he whispers. The hard part's finished. Tomorrow we show the world who you really are. She closes her eyes, and for the first time in 8 years, she doesn't have a letter written in the darkness. She has something rarer and more dangerous. She has hope. The hospital room is so quiet you can hear the ventilator's mechanical breath, in and out, like the world itself is learning to live again. Vivien's eyes flutter open at dawn, and the first thing she sees is Dante asleep in the chair beside her bed, his hand still wrapped around hers even in unconsciousness, his expensive Italian suit wrinkled from hours of vigil, his jaw darkened with exhaustion. Outside the window, Miami skyline begins to glow amber and gold as the sun climbs over the Atlantic, and somewhere in this city, justice is being served in ways the legal system will never understand. She doesn't try to move. The fur is still in her arm, and her ribs ache with a dull, persistent throb that reminds her of how close she came to not waking at all. Preston's men had been brutal and efficient. They'd waited for her outside the grocery store on Flagler Street, bundled her into a black SUV with tinted windows, driven her to an abandoned warehouse near the port where the sound of boats and water masked screams. They'd beaten her systematically, methodically, asking questions about money and accounts and leverage. She'd told them nothing because she knew nothing, and they'd gotten frustrated and angry and violent in equal measure. But then the warehouse doors had burst open at 11:27 p.m., and 12 men in black tactical gear had moved through the space like ghosts, like vengeance made flesh, like the hand of God reaching down to collect what belonged to him. She remembers the sound of gunfire, muffled by suppressors, and the screaming of Preston's men, and Dante's voice cutting through it all, steady and cold and deadly as a blade. Which one touched her? And then she remembers nothing until she woke here, with Dante's hand in hers and the knowledge that she was alive. The detective had come at 6 a.m., and Rocco had watched from the doorway while the man asked his careful questions. Vivien had given her statement in a voice that didn't sound like her own, a voice that belonged to someone who'd been remade by violence and survived it. Preston Mercer was in custody. His men were either dead or in federal holding. The warehouse had been processed. Evidence had been collected. Justice, the detective said with the exhaustion of someone who'd been up all night, was already in motion. But Dante had smiled at that word, justice, like the detective had no idea what justice actually meant in a city like Miami. Preston singing, Rocco said quietly, entering the room with fresh coffee that smells like heaven and money. He's so terrified of the Salvatores that he's giving up everyone. Vincent's organization, the dates, the amounts, everything. The feds are getting the confession of a lifetime, and Preston thinks he's going to get protection. Rocco shakes his head like he's almost pitying the fool. He has no idea that Vincent doesn't care about federal prison. Vincent cares about the principle of the thing. And the principle says you don't put your hands on a Caruso. Dante's eyes open at the sound of Rocco's voice. He doesn't jolt or move suddenly. He simply comes awake like a machine powering on, alert and dangerous and entirely present in the same moment. He looks at her, at Vivien, and something softens in his face that makes her heart hurt with a different kind of pain, the good kind, the kind that means healing. How are you feeling? His voice is rough from disuse, from hours of silence beside her bed. Like I got hit by a truck, she says, and it's the truth. Her left eye is swollen shut. Her ribs feel like they're held together by prayers and bandages. Her back, her beautiful, scarred back, has 3 new marks added to the map of her suffering. But she's alive. That's the miracle. She's alive, and he's here, and the people who hurt her are being destroyed. Preston's been remanded without bail, Dante continues, and his hands tighten around hers. The feds have enough to prosecute him for assault, battery, attempted murder, and at least 12 other federal charges. But that's almost beside the point. He leans forward, his voice dropping. What he doesn't know is that Vincent Salvatore has decided he's interested in Preston's future. Vincent takes business partners who betray their family very seriously. Preston came to you because he thought he was moving against me, trying to eliminate the person he believed had diminished his inheritance. Except what Preston didn't understand was that I would have paid any amount, sacrificed any amount, to keep you safe. That makes you more valuable to me than blood. That makes you family. And you don't touch family. Vivien's throat tightens. What's going to happen to him? The feds will get him for about 10 years, maybe 15 if they're thorough. But before the trial, before anything official happens, Preston is going to disappear for a while. The Salvatores will reach out. They'll explain certain business realities. Then he'll reappear in federal custody with a sudden willingness to cooperate, and everyone will think he's just trying to save himself. Dante's expression is carved from stone, from ancient codes that predate mercy. He chose this. He put his hands on you. In my world, there's only one response to that kind of action, and it's not forgiveness. And Margaret? Vivien asks, though part of her doesn't want to know. Margaret's cruelty was different. It was the cruelty of a woman who'd been replaced, the viciousness of someone fighting to maintain her social position. But cruelty is still cruelty, regardless of its origin. Margaret's situation is already unfolding. The IRS received an anonymous tip about her charity foundation. Apparently, over the last 3 years, she's embezzled $2 million. The foundation was supposed to provide school supplies to underprivileged children in Miami-Dade County, but Margaret had other priorities. A second home in the Hamptons. A yacht. A very expensive cocaine habit that she'd been hiding from her family. Dante's mouth curves into something that isn't quite a smile. The feds love these cases. They love the narrative, wealthy woman taking money meant for desperate children. The judge is going to crucify her. And when her family finds out, when they realize that Margaret's behavior has brought federal scrutiny to their entire enterprise, they're going to distance themselves so completely that she'll be utterly alone. Rocco sets the coffee on the side table and excuses himself with a nod that's respectful and deferential in equal measure. He's seen what no one else has seen, Dante Caruso completely undone, completely remade by the possibility of losing one person. In all the years Rocco has worked for him, through marriages and wars and power struggles, he's never seen the boss like this. Broken and rebuilt in a single night. "I need you to hear something," Dante says, and his voice is different now, softer, more raw, like he's speaking from a place he doesn't usually access. "When Rocco called me at 11:30 last night and told me you hadn't made it home, I lost my mind. Not in a spectacular way. Not with rage and violence, though God knows I wanted to hurt something. I lost my mind in the worst possible way. I understood that I had something to lose. I have Oliver. I have my business. I have status and power and respect. But none of that means anything if you're not here." She tries to speak, but her throat closes up. "I spent 7 years keeping Oliver's baby room exactly as it was the day Sophia died. Unopened presents. Crib still assembled. A mobile shaped like stars hanging above the mattress. I couldn't accept that she was gone, so I preserved her absence like it was something holy. But that's not love, that's fear. That's a man so terrified of losing something else that he stops living entirely." He brings her hand to his chest, right over his heart, and she can feel it beating beneath the expensive fabric. "You changed that. You walked into my house as nobody, as help, as invisible, as a person I was supposed to look through. But you saved Oliver on that ice, and something in me woke up. I started seeing you. Really seeing you. And when I saw you, I couldn't stop. Dante." Her voice breaks on his name. "I love you. I don't say that lightly. I haven't said it to anyone since Sophia. But I'm saying it now, and I need you to believe it with everything that you are." He pulls back, and his eyes are wet, actually wet, tears balanced on the lower lids of a man who never cries, who's been trained since childhood not to break. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you understand that you're not invisible anymore. You're not the woman people look through. You're the woman I'm building a life with. You're the mother my son already loves. You're the person who changed me." The heart monitor beeps its steady rhythm, a metronome keeping time with her pulse. Outside, Miami wakes up, cars honking, sirens wailing, the sound of a city that's both cruel and beautiful in equal measure. Somewhere in a federal detention facility, Preston Mercer is learning that money and family connection don't protect you from consequence. Somewhere else, Margaret Harrington is receiving visits from lawyers and accountants, realizing that the social standing she spent decades building can crumble in a single news cycle. But here, in this hospital room with its beeping machines and pale morning light, Vivien closes her eyes and lets herself believe that she's worth this. That she's worth a man on his knees, worth the destruction of enemies, worth the extraordinary risk of being loved by someone dangerous. "Sleep," Dante whispers, and she does. 6 months later, summer transforms Miami into a city of heat and thunder and electric storms that roll in from the ocean like God's anger. The Caruso mansion is full of life in a way it never was before. Oliver's laughter echoes through the halls. Vivien's books are stacked on every surface, histories, philosophies, novels, the accumulated evidence of a mind no longer starved. Dante proposed on Valentine's Day in the nursery he finally opened, with Oliver holding the ring box, both of them crying happy tears. They're planning an October wedding, something small and intimate, nothing like the empire business usually demands. Vivien still works with Oliver, but now she's his stepmother-to-be, his mother, his family. She's learning the legitimate side of the business, real estate holdings, the foundations Dante created in Sophia's name, the charitable work that makes the other part of his life possible. She has a voice at the table now. An opinion that matters. A presence that cannot be ignored. Margaret Harrington is serving 15 years for embezzlement and fraud. The judge made an example of her in a way that satisfied everyone except Margaret herself. Preston Mercer was never found. The Salvatore family doesn't leave loose ends, and there are some questions it's better not to ask. This evening, they're at a private beach, security at a discreet distance, Oliver building an elaborate sandcastle while Vivien helps, both of them covered in sand. Dante watches from a lounge chair, his phone ignored, his expression soft in a way that still shocks people who've known him for decades. "You're different," Rocco says, appearing with drinks. "Happy. Never thought I'd see it." "Neither did I," Dante agrees. He watches Vivien laugh as a wave destroys Oliver's castle, watches her immediately help him rebuild. She's wearing Sophia's necklace, the diamond pendant he gave her 6 months ago in that hospital room, and the sun catches it just right, making it shine like a promise kept. Later, as Oliver sleeps upstairs and they sit on the terrace overlooking the bay, Vivien asks the question that's been building inside her. "Do you ever regret it? Choosing me instead of someone from your world? You are my world now. You and Oliver. Everything else is just noise." He pulls her close, his hand resting over the necklace. "I lost Sophia. I thought that meant I'd lost my chance at family, at love, at anything soft. But grief isn't a wall, it's a bridge. It taught me that love is always a risk, but it's the only risk worth taking." That's very philosophical for a mafia boss. "I contain multitudes." He kisses her temple. "Thank you for not getting into that car and disappearing into the snow. Thank you for finding my letter before I could." They sit in comfortable silence, watching the lights of Miami glitter across the water. Vivien thinks about the letter she wrote 6 months ago, about the woman who believed she had to disappear. That woman was scared and scarred and certain she was worthless. This woman, wearing Sophia's necklace, planning a wedding, mothering a boy who calls her mom, knows better now. Sometimes the people who seem invisible carry the greatest light. Sometimes it just takes the right person to see it. If this story reminded you that you're worth fighting for, drop a like. Share it with someone who needs to remember they carry light even when they feel invisible. Subscribe for tomorrow's story, because everyone deserves to be seen. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. We wish you good health, a joyful life, and days filled with peace and happiness. No matter how hard life gets, remember that after the rain, the sky clears. We'll see you again in the next video. Goodbye.